Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show, y'all. The decisions that we make as criminals have far-reaching implications, right? The people that are hurt by our misdeeds suffer sometimes their whole lives because of the decisions that we've made. Now, this story is about a young couple named Shirley and Tim, and they made a decision early on in their lives that would impact their lives and the lives of people that they had yet to meet for years to come. Now, this is their story. Now, Shirley and Tim were high school sweethearts. They had known each other since the 9th grade. And when they graduated high school, they had these ideas of, going off, getting married and having babies and living the life, both of them working. They didn't want to go to college or anything like that, but they were smart enough to. But they wanted to just be together at all times, right? And like a lot of people in high school, they started out smoking weed. Developed a small habit, nothing major, but, they say that weed is a gateway to other things, but who knows? You feel me? Some people say it is, some people say it's not. But again, they played the game. They experimented. But see, the guy that they went to high school with, named Sam, he was the guy that supplied them the weed. And they all knew each other, so it wasn't a big deal. But see, Sam had aspirations of becoming a major dealer in the streets. And he did everything that he could to become that person. And over time, he did. And the relationship between the three of them remained solid because they went to school together. They knew each other and so on and so forth, even though they took two different paths, right? But one day, after about 5 or 6 years out of college, out of high school, working, Sam on the other end, working the way he was working, he was growing, he was coming up in the game. But Shirley and Tim, they were working. They had good jobs at one of the local factories, and they were doing good and had an apartment and talked about, having a child, building a life, and all of these different types of things. But Sam, he was making moves. He was making moves. And he had invested in this building, in this area that was known for heavy drug trafficking. He invested in this building. But see, he saw things a little different, but he didn't have the knowledge behind him. See, what Sam wanted to do was to open up a jewelry store. Now, come on now. Why would you open up a jewelry store in the hood, in an area that is dominated by drug trafficking? Don't get me wrong. He had big dreams. And I understand to some extent why he would want to do it. He said, because a lot of people that are in the game, they buy jewelry and they buy bracelets and necklaces and earrings and all this kind of stuff, get grills made and all, and he was going to do all of that type of stuff. He didn't want a liquor store and all that kind of in the area. He wanted something that, would offset his dirty money with legal money, but he didn't have the knowledge to understand that location was important. He didn't understand that. He thought, if I build it, they will come. But he kept running into problems because the location that he had this jewelry store in was high crime. People are always trying to rob and do this and do that. So he had the doors get bars on them and all this and that, and people had to punch a button to be buzzed in and buzzed out. And he had a good connection out of New York that supplied him with, low-end diamonds and things like that, right? He was just starting out. It wasn't nothing major. He wasn't Tiffany's. But he was building. He was building, and some people recognized that he was building. So when they recognized that he was building and growing, they wanted to get in on it. But see, they were dirty too. So they kept coming with that dope because they wanted a piece of wherever he was going. You feel what I'm saying? They saw the potential, and they wanted to make sure they had their hands in it, right? But see, Sam didn't realize that the individuals that he was dealing with that kept pumping him with that dope, they wanted it all. See, they were bigger than him in the game, and they wanted to make sure that they were able to keep their foot on his neck because he's a smart guy. And whatever plans he had, they wanted to be a part of it because eventually they would take it. But see, Sam was smart. He took the dope, paid his bills, but he never let them in on his legitimate stuff. But they patient. They played a long game. And here's what happened. Things kept going south for him. Things were never working out the way they were supposed to work out. And the building, all the time the fire and safety people coming, having to keep it up to code and pay all of these fines, then paying his employees and not making enough money because the location wasn't good. The people that were able to come and buy, they were buying smaller items because they didn't have a lot of money, and the people that had the money were afraid to come into that neighborhood. He was advertising on radio, he was passing out flyers, he had good deals, but they didn't want to come in that area because if they come in that area, the people that had the money, they ran the risk of being robbed. So he paid a security guard to make sure that they were safe if they came to the store. But getting to the store from wherever they were coming from was like navigating a minefield. And they didn't want to do it. So he started losing money, even though, when you hustling and you getting money, you're not paying attention to how much you're losing because you're over here on the side offsetting it by the dope money that you're making. But here's the problem with that. At some point, you got to pay attention. So after about a couple of years of him doing everything that he was doing, he realized that he had to find a way to get out from under it. He wanted out from under it. And he tried to sell the building. And he wanted to sell it to some people that were legitimate in what they were doing, not the people that were in the streets with him. He didn't want that. He couldn't get a buyer. But wait a minute. Those same people that were trying to pump him with that dope, they came to him with an idea that this is what you can do. Get somebody to burn it down. He said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to keep the building and lease it out. I want to do that. He wanted to make some money off of it. He figured if he could just lease it out, he could turn it into a club or something like that would be a little bit more profitable to him in that area, right? But he had to get out from under because he had a lot of inventory and all this and that. But wait a minute, the light bulb went off above his head. Sam had insurance, right? But for the insurance to pay off, something had to happen. He wanted the place robbed. This is where Shirley and Tim come in. See, he paid. Well, let me get back before we get to the payment part. He had a conversation with Shirley and Tim. And when he had this conversation with Shirley and Tim, he told them, look, I'll pay you to rob the joint. I'll pay you. And they sat there, they thought about it, but they were like, look, we don't want to get into anything like that. They hadn't done anything illegal in their lives other than buy a little weed. You feel me? So they didn't want to cross that line. You don't know where you go when you cross that line. He told them, look, wait a minute. It's not really like you're robbing. I'm going to give you the key. What I want you to do is just go in there and take all of the inventory, break a few windows, and then you leave out the back. Nobody will know. And then I'll report it. And then you give me the stuff, and then I'll pay you what I need to pay you. And in fact, he said, I'll give you half up front. The total deal was for $10,000. Do you know how much money that is to a working class family? $10,000. He was going to give them $5 up front and the key to the door. So Shirley and Tim, that night when they were at home, they were laying in the bed and they got to thinking about it. It's like, well, it's really not robbing the place if he's giving us the key. You know how you do when you're trying to talk yourself into doing something? You know it's wrong anyway, but you're looking for all the different angles and stuff like that, right? And Shirley, she lay in the bed, she knew better. But she loved Tim. And if Tim was willing to do it, she was ride or die. And y'all know what I mean when I say that. She wanted to do whatever her man wanted her to do. So she said, okay, let's do it. So immediately after they said and agreed on doing it, they started spending the money in their minds. What they wanted to buy and the trip they wanted to take. Things that they had always talked about doing but never had the money to do. Now they were going to be able to do it. And it wasn't going to set them back at all because this is extra money. All they had to do was go in there, take everything, break a few windows, and leave. And then Sam would do the rest. So they called and they told him they had agreed to do it. So he came by and he gave him the money. Gave him an extra key. Right? And he told him what night would be the best night to go by there. But see, when they went by there, they started to get antsy about actually doing it. They started to question, should they really do it? See, that was that part inside of that instinct that would tell them that this might not be a good idea. This might not be a good idea. See, a lot of times when that happens, we ignore that feeling. But they wanted that money. They wanted that money. And who did it hurt? Who was it going to hurt? The person that owned the place, he's the one giving them the key. They didn't have any kids. So they didn't see that it was hurting anybody. The insurance company, but that's what they're in business for. They make a lot of money anyway, right? So they went on in there. You got to keep in mind, back in the day, these places didn't have no cameras, especially in the hood. You feel what I'm saying? And if they did have a camera, the old CCTV camera, they don't work, and they're real grainy. But Sam didn't have no cameras in the job. So they went in there, kept the lights off, and with a flashlight, they methodically loaded up bags of stuff. Loaded up bags. And then they went to the back of the store. They broke some windows. You know what I'm saying? He told them exactly how to do it. Go outside the store, on the back of the store, break the window so the glass would fall in to the store as if somebody was trying to get in and break the glass on the doors with the bars on them and all this and that, so it could appear that you reached your hand in and all this and that. It was just weird, right? How they rationalized and came up with whatever story they needed to make it make sense. And then they left. But when they left, like all situations, y'all, they didn't factor in that somebody would notice a flashlight just whipping around in the store after hours, that the sound of glass hitting the floor, right? They didn't calculate all of that because they were not criminal-minded individuals. They were not. So they did what they were supposed to do and they left. But see, somebody saw them. Somebody saw them looking like two cat burglars. Got a bag over each shoulder, rolling and getting down, get back to their car, and then they rode on home. License plate. License plate. We got a witness. So when they get back to the house, unaware of what was taking place with the witness, they called Sam and tell him everything was good. He comes by, gives him the other money, and he takes one of the bags, not both. He takes one of the bags and he puts it in his car. And he tells him he'll be back to get the other bag because he had a lot of stuff in the car, so he didn't want to have it too full. Makes no sense to me that he would do that. Makes no sense to me at all. Right? So Tim is thinking. So he takes the other bag and he hides it in the backyard in the shed. Hides it. Right? Now all of a sudden, without any warning whatsoever, they get a knock at the door. It's the police. And they start to ask all these questions about where they had been and what they were doing and all this and that, right? And they told them that we have somebody reporting a crime that was committed at the jewelry store down the block and across the street, and the license plate on your car is matching the description and so on and so forth. And they said it was two people that looked like a man and a woman, or maybe two men. They were not sure, but they wanted to know where they had been that night. So they gave them a local joker story, and they asked them, had anybody else used your car? And they told them no, and they said, okay, thank you. They took the information and they left. And then they went to the owner, because Sam had called it in. And they talked to him and they asked him, did he know these individuals and so on and so forth? So he started panicking, thinking, well, maybe they might say something. So I gotta get at them. I gotta make sure that it's not me, but it's them. And he told them that they were good people, but he didn't know. He didn't know. And he said, who ID'd them? Who told them that it might be, who told y'all that it might be them? So they told him they weren't going to divulge the witness or anything like that, but it was somebody that lived around the store, and it could have been anybody. Could have been anybody. So Sam, he gives them a call, and he tells them, he said, look, somebody said that they saw y'all He said, if anything goes wrong, I'll help pay for the lawyer and all this. He said, but put that other bag of diamonds up. So Tim not thinking that this is going to be anything major, because it's like, okay, he's not tripping because the owner gave him the key to the place, so he can't do it. He can't do it. So at the same time, he's looking at the situation like, let me make sure that I move these diamonds. I got to move them. I can't have a situation where they actually find these diamonds on this property. So he takes them. He doesn't even tell Shirley. He takes them away from the house and he buries them. And he hides them. And the next morning, the police return with a warrant to search the house. They find some money, which they had in the house. But back in the day, it's not a big deal. A lot of people didn't trust banks. They wasn't tripping about that because they didn't say any money was missing. They were looking for jewelry. They searched the house, couldn't find it, and they had a warrant only for the house. Right? So they didn't search the shed even though it wasn't in the shed. But Tim was sure everything would be fine. But after they finished searching and didn't find anything, they told him that they were going to have to take him in and they were going to put him in a lineup and see what came of it. So they arrested both of them and took them down to the station. And if you want to know what happens after that, you're going to have to tune in to the next episode, right? This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.